People who were easy kids, quiet, independent, never demanding too much. You were praised for it. Parents loved it. Teachers loved it. You were the child who didn't need constant supervision, the one who could entertain themselves for hours. But here's the psychological truth no one told you. That wasn't maturity. That was emotional survival. When a child feels invisible, it is not always because no one was around. It is because no one was attuned. No one noticed what you felt inside. No one responded to your inner world. No one mirrored back to you the simple message, I see you, and you matter. So your nervous system adapted. You learned something subtle, but powerful. Something that became the operating system of your entire life. You learned that having needs doesn't bring connection. It brings disappointment. Or worse, it brings burden. So you stopped needing. You stopped asking. You stopped taking up space. Not consciously, physiologically. Your body learned to stay quiet, to stay safe. And here's the twist most people miss. You didn't feel neglected in obvious ways. There was food on the table. There was structure. Maybe even love. In actions, not in presence. But emotional neglect is not about what happened to you. It is about what did not happen for you. No one helped you regulate your emotions. No one named what you felt. No one stayed with you long enough for your nervous system to calm down after a scare. So you became self-contained. Not because you were naturally strong, but because relying on others felt pointless. If this is already resonating with you, if something in your chest just tightened or felt heavy, subscribe. Here, we don't romanticize coping mechanisms. We decode them. And by the end of this video, you won't just understand why you learned to disappear. You will recognize where you are still doing it right now without realizing it. Here's what most people misunderstand about emotional neglect. It doesn't create loud pain. It creates quiet absence. When no one is emotionally available, the child doesn't protest forever. The nervous system eventually makes a calculation. My feelings don't change the environment. And that is when the pattern. You stop checking what you feel inside, and you start scanning what others need outside. This is not personality. This is conditioning. Your attention turns outward. You become observant, hyper-aware, good at reading rooms, moods, micro shifts in tone of voice. Because when you are invisible, awareness becomes your safety strategy. Your system learns a specific set of rules. If I don't interrupt, I won't be rejected. If I don't need much, I won't overwhelm anyone. If I disappear emotionally, I won't be a burden. So you internalize a belief that sounds harmless, but is actually destructive. Connection must be earned by not needing it. This is where self-erasure begins. Not in a dramatic moment, but in thousands of tiny decisions you make every single day. You don't ask for help with a heavy box. You don't correct people when they misunderstand you. You don't express disappointment. You rationalize it immediately. And over time, something subtle happens. You stop expecting to be met. Your emotional range narrows. Not because you don't feel, but because feeling without response is exhausting. So the system adapts again. You mute desire. You minimize longing. You become low maintenance. People admire this version of you. They call you easygoing, strong, independent. But internally, there is a quiet grief, because the child part of you didn't want independence. It wanted attunement. It wanted someone to notice before you had to explain, to stay present when emotions got messy, to teach your system that expression leads to connection, not withdrawal. Instead, your body learned something else. Staying unseen hurts less than reaching out and not being met. And this is the part most adults never question. They think their emotional invisibility is just who they are. But it is not. It is a pattern your nervous system memorized and keeps repeating long after the original environment is gone. If you are noticing yourself in this, pause for a second. Notice your breath right now. Notice if your jaw is clenched. Notice if your shoulders are up by your ears. Notice how familiar this tension feels. That familiarity isn't coincidence. It is memory. It is your body holding on. This is where emotional neglect stops being a story and becomes biology. A child who isn't emotionally met doesn't just feel lonely. Their nervous system never learns how to settle in connection. There was no co-regulation. No adult helping you name emotions. No one staying present while your body was overwhelmed. No safe rhythm of, I feel I am seen, I calm down. So your system adapted alone. At first, it goes into hypervigilance. You become alert, attentive, scanning for shifts in mood, energy, disappointment. Not because you are anxious by nature, but because unpredictability trained your body to stay ready. Then, over time, something else happens. Hypervigilance is expensive. It costs too much energy. So the nervous system introduces a second strategy, shut down. This is where invisibility turns inward. You feel less. Not dramatically numb, just muted. Like your emotional volume was turned down to avoid overload. You are still functional, still responsible, still fine. But inside, there is a quiet flatness. This isn't peace, it is anesthesia. Your window of tolerance, the range where emotions feel manageable, becomes narrow. Too much closeness feels invasive. Too much emotion feels overwhelming. Too much need yours or someone else's triggers discomfort. So your system stays in the middle, contained, controlled, unavailable even to you. And here's the paradox. People assume you are calm, grounded, emotionally stable, but your body isn't relaxed. It is braced, jaw tight, chest held, breathing shallow without you noticing. Because invisibility taught your system one rule. Visibility equals risk. Risk of being ignored. Risk of being too much. Risk of being disappointed again. So your nervous system chooses what it knows. Stay small. Stay quiet. Stay regulated alone. And this is why, as an adult, you might struggle to explain what is wrong. There is no single trauma event, no obvious wound to show, just chronic tiredness, emotional distance, a sense that connection never quite lands. That is not a flaw. That is a nervous system that never learned that being emotionally seen could be safe. In this next part, we need to talk about relationships, because this is where the pattern creates the most confusion. You don't just carry emotional invisibility into adulthood, you recreate it, not intentionally, not consciously, but psychologically. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar care, so you gravitate toward environments where your old adaptation still works. You choose relationships where you are the listener, not the one listened to. You become the reliable one, not the one who needs support. You stay in dynamics where you are valued for what you do, not for what you feel, and it feels normal. Because visibility was never associated with safety in your body, so when someone actually asks you a real question, what do you need? Or how did that make you feel? Your system freezes. Not because you don't have an answer, but because answering feels like exposure without armor. This is why invisibility often turns into emotional distance. You have difficulty receiving care without feeling guilty. You have a constant sense that you are replaceable, or a quiet resentment no one sees coming. You are present but not felt, included but not known. And here's the paradox that traps people for years. You want to be seen, but being seen feels unsafe. So you unconsciously send mixed signals. You minimize your needs, then feel hurt when they are missed. You say it is fine, then feel invisible when people believe you. You don't ask for space, then feel suffocated. This is not inconsistency. It is a nervous system conflict. One part of you longs for connection. Another part learned that connection comes with disappointment. So invisibility becomes a compromise. I will stay close, but not exposed. I will belong, but not fully. I will be here, but not too much. And over time, this shapes your identity. You start believing you are just not the type of person people center. That deep connection is for others. That being emotionally chosen is rare, maybe unrealistic. But that belief didn't come from truth. It came from repetition. The repetition of being overlooked. The repetition of self-silencing. The repetition of adapting instead of being met. If you are recognizing this pattern in your relationships, leave a comment. Saying it out loud helps break the cycle of silence. This self-recognition organizes you internally. Now, let's look at the mask. Over time, your nervous system doesn't just use the strategy, it builds an identity around it. You stop saying, I learned not to need, and start saying, I am just independent. You don't think I adapted to emotional absence. You think, I am low maintenance. You don't notice the loss. You admire the control. This is the most deceptive part of emotional neglect, because the traits you develop to survive are praised by the world, especially in the workplace. You are the strong one, the one who doesn't complain, the one who handles things alone, the one who doesn't make things complicated. And for a while, this identity feels empowering. You don't rely on anyone. You don't expect much. You don't get disappointed easily, but there is a cost no one names. Independence turns into isolation. Strength turns into emotional loneliness. Self-sufficiency turns into not knowing how to receive. And here is the psychological inversion. You are not independent because you trust yourself. You are independent because your body doesn't trust others. You are not low maintenance because you don't have needs. You are low maintenance because you learned that expressing needs didn't change outcomes. You are not strong because pain doesn't affect you. You are strong because you learned how to carry it silently. That silence becomes automatic. You don't notice how often you override your own discomfort, how quickly you say it is okay when it is not, how rarely you pause to ask, what do I actually feel right now? Because the identity is convincing. It says, this is who I am. But underneath that identity is a nervous system that never got the message. The message that taking up emotional space could be safe. So the false self keeps doing its job. It keeps you functional, respected, contained, but it also keeps you unseen, even by yourself. And eventually, something starts to crack. This is the burnout. The moment where being strong suddenly feels heavy instead of noble. A quiet question that won't go away. If I am so independent, why do I feel so alone when I stop moving? That question is not weakness. It is the beginning of truth. The turning point rarely looks dramatic. There is no breakdown, no clear crisis. It looks like tiredness that doesn't go away, like relationships that feel hollow even when they are good, like a quiet irritability you can't explain. This is the moment invisibility stops working, not because you suddenly want attention, but because your body is done carrying everything alone. Up until now, your system survived by staying contained, by managing emotions internally, by not needing regulation from anyone else. But regulation has a limit, and when that limit is reached, the body speaks. Through exhaustion, through numbness, through anxiety that comes out of nowhere. This isn't failure, it is feedback. Your nervous system is saying, I can't keep self-abandoning to maintain connection. And this is where many people panic. Because the old strategy is gone, but the new one hasn't formed yet. You start noticing things you used to override. Discomfort when someone dismisses you. Resentment when you are always the one adapting. A quiet anger at how little space you have taken in your own life. That anger doesn't mean you are becoming difficult. It means you are becoming aware. This is also where guilt shows up. Guilt for wanting more. Guilt for having needs. Guilt for feeling disappointed when others don't notice. Because the old belief is still there. Needing is dangerous, so your system hesitates. One part of you wants to stay invisible, because at least it is familiar. Another part knows that disappearing is costing you your aliveness. This internal conflict feels disorienting. You might pull away from people, or feel unusually sensitive, or question your identity altogether. Good. That confusion is not regression. It is reorganization. It is your system renegotiating its rules. Learning that silence is not the same as safety. Learning that containment is not the same as peace. Learning that being unseen is no longer tolerable. And here's the most important thing to understand. This phase is not about forcing visibility. It is about creating internal permission. Permission to feel before explaining. Permission to notice before minimizing. Permission to take up space, first with yourself. So how do we rebuild? Reconstruction does not feel empowering at first. It feels awkward, unnatural, almost wrong. Because your nervous system was built around one rule: don't need, don't show, don't take space. So when you stop disappearing, your body doesn't relax. It panics. Not because visibility is dangerous now, but because it used to be. This is where most people sabotage themselves without realizing. They think reconstruction means suddenly expressing everything, setting hard boundaries overnight, becoming visibly confident. That is not reconstruction, that is flooding. Real reconstruction is quieter. It starts internally. You begin noticing sensations instead of overriding them. Tension in the stomach, discomfort in the chest, longing, fatigue. You don't explain them away. You don't judge them, you stay. This is the first skill that was never taught: self-attunement. Before asking others to see you, you learn to see yourself without disappearing. Then comes the second step: letting small needs exist out loud. Not dramatic disclosure, not emotional unloading, just presence. Pausing before saying it is fine. Admitting I don't know instead of adapting. Allowing silence when you would normally smooth things over. Your system will resist this. You will feel selfish, exposed, like you are doing something wrong. That doesn't mean you are. It means your body is leaving survival mode. Reconstruction also means tolerating disappointment differently. Some people won't meet you. Some relationships were built entirely around your invisibility. And when you stop playing that role, those dynamics destabilize. That loss hurts. But here is the difference now. You are no longer interpreting unmet needs as proof that you should disappear. You are learning to say, this doesn't fit me anymore. That is not rejection. That is differentiation. Slowly, your nervous system updates its map. Visibility doesn't always lead to abandonment. Needs don't automatically overwhelm others. Connection can include repair, not just endurance. This is how emotional space becomes safe. Not because everyone responds perfectly, but because you no longer erase yourself to maintain closeness, and one day, something subtle shifts. You feel tired, but honest. Exposed, but grounded. Seen not because others suddenly changed, but because you stopped hiding from yourself. That is reconstruction. Not becoming louder, but becoming real. No armor, no performance, no disappearance. Here's the reframe most people never hear. You weren't invisible because you lacked presence. You were invisible because no one reflected you back. In psychology, being seen isn't about attention. It is about mirroring. Someone noticing your emotional state, naming it. Staying with you long enough for your nervous system to settle. That didn't happen. So you learned to exist without confirmation, and that shaped everything. Your restraint, your self-control, your quiet way of moving through the world. But let us be precise. You didn't disappear because you were weak. You disappeared because disappearing worked. It kept you connected. It kept you safe. It kept you regulated in an environment that couldn't hold your emotions. That adaptation deserves respect, not shame. But here's the truth that changes everything. What protected you then is costing you intimacy now, not because something is wrong with you, but because your nervous system is still following outdated rules. Rules like, don't take up space, don't expect to be noticed, don't need too much. Those rules were learned, and what is learned can be updated, slowly, safely, without forcing. You don't heal invisibility by demanding attention. You heal it by allowing presence first internally, then relationally. By noticing yourself without minimizing, by letting small needs exist without apology, by choosing environments where regulation is shared, not earned, and most importantly, by understanding this, you were never invisible because you didn't matter. You were invisible because no one taught your system that being fully seen could be safe. So the question isn't, how do I become visible? The real question is, what will you do with intimacy when it finally shows up? If this reflection helped you see your own history with less self-blame, share it with someone who learned to survive quietly, and hit subscribe. The Psychology Unseen isn't just a channel. It is a shift out of survival and back into emotional truth.